Hi folks, here I am to talk to you about ethnographic evaluation. I want you to know that this is the first time that I've gotten this far with these tapes, so I must be figuring it out or something. In talking about the use of ethnography and evaluation, we have to talk a little bit first about the use of ethnography in general. Ethnography has probably 100 definitions, but the one that I'll use in here is really a very simple one. Ethnography is the study of something, of a situation, in order to see what it looks like from the point of view of the participant, from the insider's point of view. This doesn't mean that it doesn't get translated later into an etic or outsider's point of view. But what you're trying to do with evaluation is, with ethnography, is to figure out what the situation looks like to someone who's participating in it. Ethnographic evaluation, therefore, is trying to look at how a product or a program or a project looks to someone who is doing it, someone who is delivering it, someone who is using it, someone who is administering it, someone who has some kind of involvement with the evaluand. The ethnography can be used for any form of evaluation, therefore, that incorporates this point of view into its considerations. It doesn't need to be the only thing you consider. You can mix it with other kinds of methods. You can mix it with an etic point of view. You can mix it with a survey, with an economic analysis, about anything you want. But it's defined as ethnographic by the fact that it has this component that seeks to describe the evaluand from an insider's perspective. Very often, in fact, ethnography is part of other kinds of evaluations. The issue that arises from ethnographic evaluation in the evaluation field has largely to do with the validity of ethnographic data. Very often, ethnographers in general and anthropologists specifically have a problem with so-called harder scientists, with those who are economists, for example, or non-ethnographers, is a question of the validity of the data. How do you know that what we found out in an ethnographic study is valid? That is, how do we know that it reflects some kind of reality, whether that's an absolute reality out there or whether that's some reality that's established by program developers or by those who are trying to launch the thing being evaluated. This criticism is abundant in the evaluation literature. And it usually is coming from evaluators who come from a more or less positivist position. They're down toward that end of the continuum of investigation, which holds that there is one reality out there that is knowable and that can be the subject of a scientific study. One good example of this is in the readings that you had for this week in the article by Stufflebeam, which talks about how evaluation must be developed according to a set of quality standards, which is quite positivist and was adopted by the educational evaluation branch of the American Evaluation Association some years ago. For ethnographers doing evaluations, or I guess anything else, their interest is more in looking at a consensus of experience from a group of people who are somehow culturally connected. So there, and also with variability of opinion. what are the outlying opinions, and is there some common trait or common prior experience that explains differences in opinion. However, ethnography must present data in such a way that other people can reconstruct the logic that you used to get from the data to the conclusions. And this is how we handle this question of the validity of ethnographic data. What I mean by that is that the analysis of the data is presented in such a way that anyone who is looking at it can track your chain of logic from data from the time that you collected the data to the time that you drew your conclusions. We'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks, but let me just, for the time being, let it suffice to say that it is absolutely critical that ethnographic data are collected, analyzed, and presented in such a way that the logic underlying your conclusions can be readily seen by another person. Much of the reading that I gave you this week revolved around empowerment evaluation. I gave you a lot of articles on this debate because this debate captures a lot of the argument that happens around the validity and reliability of qualitative data in evaluation. Empowerment evaluation is an approach to evaluation that was developed by David Fetterman in 1993-1994. Fetterman is an anthropologist who was president of the American Evaluation Association at that time. And empowerment evaluation, a la Fetterman and his close collaborator, Abe Wandersman, is evaluation which is driven by the needs, the desires, the perceptions of the participants in the evaluant or in the program. So as you see by Fetterman's article in 2005 in Jackie Copeland Carson and my book, the person who is living in the program in this case is involved in every stage of the evaluation, developing the evaluation questions, developing data collection modalities. Often they participate in collecting the data and they analyze the data and report it. The goal of empowerment evaluation is to create in the participants in the evaluation an ability to use evaluation to directly improve their own lives. Some people call this advocacy for the usually poor and underserved populations who are participating in the program. In Fetterman's case, largely educational programs that are being evaluated using this approach. There is a tremendous amount of argument within evaluation about many things about empowerment evaluation. It opens just about every controversy that exists around using qualitative data for scientific purposes to support scientific inference. There are several questions that arise around empowerment evaluation. First of all, is it really evaluation? Evaluation, as it is usually defined, is a study to determine the merit or worth of something, some activity or product relative to some kind of a program design. Can empowerment evaluation be about value? Well, you could argue that it is about the values of the participants who are participating in the empowerment evaluation and who will ultimately utilize its results. And this is certainly what Fetterman and Wandersman argue. However, you can also argue that it can't be evaluation because there is no standard against which to evaluate whether or not the program has value or merit. So, you know, is it evaluation? It depends on who you talk to. However, a lot of evaluators do it. So, particularly in working with social and educational programs for underserved populations of some kind. So it's there. Whether it's evaluation or not depends on which evaluator you talk to. Um, some people hold that empowerment evaluation is an ideology rather than a scientific approach. That it really is a way of reinforcing the ideology of participants, and it's grounded in the idea that the ultimate good is social welfare and promoting the needs of people whose needs are not being well met. Uh, this also is something that is arguable. I think many of us would probably agree that that's a good thing to do. The real question is whether or not it can be considered evaluation and whether it can be used to assess whether a program is good, bad, or indifferent. Um, Finally, um, can evaluation be advocacy and still be evaluation? In other words, is it possible to simultaneously promote the interest of the participants in the evaluation while rendering some kind of a judgment of the merit of a program? This is a fairly problematic thing. You know, I don't think the critics of empowerment evaluation are opposed to advocacy as advocacy. They are opposed to calling it evaluation. And finally, there's some question about whether empowerment evaluation really empowers. Following all of this hard work, participate in an evaluation, do the participants at the end wind up able to make significant changes in their own communities, changes in their own lives because of what they learned in the empowerment evaluation? I don't know of much reporting that has been done that argues this point. I'm sure there have been occasional evaluations in which people felt empowered, but the real criterion of empowerment, of course, is are they able to make substantive changes in their lives using what they've learned about the program? And this has been far less well documented. Having said all of this, empowerment evaluation is an extreme position. It's one that is far over on the side of the evaluation being controlled by the participant, compared to a traditional evaluation where the evaluation is controlled by the evaluator and or the client who commissioned the evaluation. So there are a whole range of activities in the middle that are participant evaluations to one degree or another. Sometimes participant evaluations involve only the participation of staff or people implementing the program. It's still participatory. They're not part of the evaluation team, but it's not. It usually does not go down to consider the needs and perceptions of the subjects in the evaluation. You know, it's a kind of evaluation that you certainly will do enough of in your careers, so that it's important for you to know about it. You may, in fact, even wind up doing empowerment evaluations, which I did in one case, and I got to tell you, it was really fun. I'm not sure whether it was evaluation or not. I'm not sure how much it ever got used, but everybody had a good time. Ethnographic evaluation itself is becoming increasingly important in evaluation as people realize that measurement is not very valuable unless you're sure of what you're measuring. So it's an up-and-coming way of doing evaluation, but I still believe that it has to be sort of combined with other ways in order to be effective. So that's it. Talk to you next week. Bye.